It just becomes easier to do the wrong thing. Folks, we do. And then we say, well, why did I do that? Because it got easier. Because when we're close to God, God's conviction challenges us. There's a third thing. You say, wow, that's a dim picture. That's a dim picture. Isn't God encouraging us here? What are you talking about, Dale? Well, let's look at the third thing he talks about. Because he says we must choose a proven path. We must choose to abandon hindrances because the ultimate goal is to choose to endure. Notice what it says there. Since we have such a large cloud of witnesses surrounding us, lay aside every weight and sin that so easily ensnare us. And then what does he say to do? And run with endurance the race that lies before us. Run. How many of you remember Forrest Gump being chased down the road? And Jenny was back there, run, Forrest, run! God's saying, run the race that's set before you. Run. Now, I don't run as fast as I used to. I never did run too fast anyway. I don't run fast. But just because you don't run fast anymore doesn't mean you can't run in the right direction and you can't run steady. You can do it. You can do it. You can run in the right direction. And one of the problems is sometimes we run away from God. And when we do those things, folks, we have a problem. What is endurance? Is endurance just the ability to keep on breathing and doing those things? Well, you can say that. But endurance, folks, is pressing through the pain. Pressing through the difficulty. Not giving in. Determination. Willingness to do. I have at sometimes, and I know you will find this hard to believe, been accused of being stubborn. I know you wouldn't. It's just a strong will. I want you to know that. And sometimes you have to have that kind of strong will if you're going to endure against the wiles of the devil, folks. You've got to determine above everything else, I will keep on going. I will endure. I will run the race with patience that's set before me. Endurance comes, folks, when we refuse to give in or refuse to give up. It is. Refuse to give in or give up. I read a story the other day, and I was trying to find examples of endurance, and I couldn't find a video on this because I really wanted to show it to you. The longest time that it's ever taken, that I think was ever recorded, to run a marathon, 26.1 miles, was 32 hours. 32 hours. A little over that. It was in England. The guy ran it. You say, well, man, he must have been slow. No, he was a very good athlete. But he ran it in a full deep sea diver suit, helmet and all, with the leaded boots. You say, okay, why would any intelligent person do that? He was asked that question, matter of fact. And he said, I just wanted to see if I could endure to get it done. I wanted to see if I could endure the pain and I could endure the test to get it done. He said, I'd ran the marathons in tennis shoes and shorts. I just wanted to make sure that I was worthy. 32 hours of doing it. You say, well, that's a little beyond it, isn't it? It's a little beyond. Well, it is. But folks, you say, shouldn't we be sprinting? Absolutely. But in order to do that, what do we have to do? We have to lay aside some things, don't we? Some of you are trying to run a race with all kinds of sin hanging on. You know. You're trying to be what God wants you to be and be what you want to be and what the world wants you to be all at the same time. And folks, what happens is it may take you a long time to run the race. And you'll never win the prize. I guarantee you that guy, he's the only one that I think has ever, at least I could ever find any record. I got to thinking, did he get a victory? Well, he's the only person. If he had ever been in a race with people running in a deep sea diving suit, he might have been the only winner because nobody else has tried it. But the reality is, folks, he said, lay aside those weights. Lay aside those sins. Choose to endure. Refuse to give in. Endurance means, folks, and on his case this was true also, endurance means commitment regardless of what it takes to accomplish the tasks that I know that God wants me to do. Isn't it? It's too easy to give up, isn't it? We live in a society, oftentimes, it's just too easy. Well, I just quit. It's too hard. I quit. It's just too hard. Paul says, if you want to be a champion, you learn to endure. You learn to endure. Not easy, is it? The fourth thing he tells us is in verse 2 then. He challenges us to stay focused. Boy, this is really important. What does he say? Keeping your eyes on Jesus, the source and the perfecter of our faith. Keeping your eyes on Jesus. We are far too easily distracted, and the devil depends on that. Doesn't he? We get distracted. One of the things that just, there was a few years ago, and I don't know when it actually started, I began hearing this, I got bored. It was boring. Yeah. Sometimes it's boring because you're not engaged. You're not engaged in it. Now, sometimes I've been in some meetings and I was a little bored too. And what happens is because my mind is running somewhere else or doing something else. I'm not really engaged in what's going on. And folks, that may be okay in some things, but in your faith, it's deadly. In your faith, it's deadly not to be engaged in your faith, isn't it? That means that to be not engaged in your faith means that you're engaged with everything else, and you only live your faith when you need to, or when it's convenient, or when you get in trouble, and you say, wow, God, where are you at now? Being engaged in your faith, folks, and staying focused means to be walking in your faith day in and day out. Ultimately, the goal for our life, and he said, lay aside every weight and sin which does so easily beset us. And he tells us to run the race with patience. Our goal for life is to reflect Jesus. That when people see us, the actions of our life and the things that we do reflect Jesus. Now, I've got a little simple question. If the light of the sun shines on you, how are you doing with reflecting Jesus? Do others see Jesus in you? Do they? That's what God says. If we stay focused, that happens. Our lives reflect. Now, what do they reflect? It's very simple. They reflect what is important to us. What is important to us. If I wanted to talk with you about what God was doing in your life, you might say, okay, preacher, I'll find time. But if I want to talk to you about that basketball team up the road a little bit, some of you would find time to talk with me, and your face would light up. Right? It would. You would. And I'm not saying that can't be important to you, but folks, does your face light up when somebody talks to you about Jesus? There's some priorities in our life, isn't there? It really needs to be. We need to stay focused on what God is doing. And the last thing he tells us then, and this is why this is particularly important. He says, choose to accept every challenge in life by faith. Look what he says here. Keeping our eyes on Jesus, the source and the perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that lay before him endured a cross and despised the shame and is set down at the right hand of God's throne.